Welcome. Today's post is, Golf. Published on June 17, 2023. How is golf used as a calm? Golf's first recorded hole-in-one happened on September 16, 1869. A week later, on September 24, the infamous Black Friday event took place. A Wall Street panic where gold prices plummeted. And that's not the only connection to money. There's a lot to dig into here. Here are the topics we'll be decoding today. You can always find this list in the description below. If you enjoy this video, please press the like button, and subscribe for weekly full-length blog posts, and shorter, more shareable videos. Let's begin. The biggest stories right now are connected in a way you may not have noticed. June 10, 2023, Trump looming indictment for handling of classified docs at his Bedminster golf resort. June 11, 2023, Saudi Arabia completes its hostile takeover of U.S. golf. What's going on with golf? Time to decode pro golf. Golf equals. This takeover by Saudi Arabia is something Donald Trump has supported. PGA Tour canceled Trump courses for the tour, but given the Salman/Trump relationship, Trump courses could become a mainstay on future tours. Does this matter? To decode golf we have to dissect the famous parts. Jack Nicklaus is in every top 5 golfer list I found, often in the number 2 spot. He also designed one of Trump's most famous courses. Jack Nicklaus, Trump loves the game of golf more than he loves money. I'll be decoding Jack Nicklaus and Trump and the golf courses later, but before we do any of that we have to understand what golf even is used as a symbol for. For this we need to identify patterns. Let's start by going back as far as possible into golf history. September 13, 1869, Jay Gould and Fisk begin attempt to control U.S. gold market. September 16, 1869, golf's first recorded hole-in-one. September 24, 1869, Black Friday Wall Street panic, gold prices plummet due to Gould's conspiracy. Gould. Gold. Golf. Gold/golf. Can it really be that simple? Yes. The green association with golf is a symbol for money which itself was tied to gold. Golf is spelled like gold, but with an F instead of a D. But that doesn't explain how it's used, that just gives us a direction to begin understanding the symbol. We need more patterns. The very first PGA Tour course. May 17, 1901. Stock market crash. May 20, 1901, first PGA Tour Championship course incorporated. Wouldn't you know it, The origin of the PGA tied to the crashing stock market. Clearly a connection to the money market, but who is using it and why? To go further we need to dig into the most famous golfers. Arnold Palmer. The first mega star of golf was Arnold Palmer. Born a month before the great stock market crash. One day before 911 emergency calm. Warning of things to come. 4. Maybe, maybe not. When did Palmer's fame begin? The famous moment, Destiny in Detroit, because clearly it was meant as a symbol. August 23, 1954, Destiny in Detroit first match. August 24, 1954. Bank of Israel, central bank established. +4. August 28, 1954. Arnold Palmer's fame begins explosively with win. Israel and the central bank in relation to Palmer's origin is a big clue. Keep in mind just how much money is sent to Israel a year. Considerably more than any other country despite being much smaller in population and size than most. But how exactly is that money used? This is where the symbol of his name comes into play. I believe Palmer is meant to invoke the symbol of palming money from foreign aid. The trick of making the money look like it's going in one direction, but really it goes in another. It's also likely meant to invoke a control of puppets, as palm tree is a symbol for control over plants covered. This ties into his logo of umbrella. Note the origin involves a lovely woman with an umbrella, i.e. instructions on how to get under the umbrella, blackmail. Why would the USA fund it? The answer is given in symbolism. The same day the Bank of Israel was created, note what passed in Congress. August 24, 1954, Bank of Israel. August 24, 1954, Communist Party outlawed. August 28, 1954, Arnold Palmer's fame begins. How did they go about doing that? We have to keep going to find out. August 28, 1954, Arnold Palmer's win. August 28, 1954, U.S. debt ceiling raised. August 30, 1954, Atomic Energy Act of 1954 allows private companies restricted data. September 1, 1954, Rear Window with Grace Kelly. This explains it. The symbol of Rear Window is of a journalist spying. The point was identifying communist insurgents, hence it being passed the same day as Central Bank, so the act of spying to accomplish this was funded. Rear Window was just one of two Hitchcock Grace Kelly vehicles at that time. May 29, 1954, First Bilderberg meeting, company coordination. May 29, 1954, Dial M for Murder Hitchcock a movie about laying a trap to catch a murderer using phone surveillance. How is it coordinated? August 1954, Destiny in Detroit. November 1954, Arnold Palmer first sponsorship. December 20, 1954, Arnold Palmer marriage. December 20, 1954, Honeymooners Jackie Gleason largest TV deal to date. Marriages often represent two sides coming together. In 1977 Honeymooner symbolism was tied to what? The answer was to move the data offshore. The columns were tied into symbols of moon plus Carrie White. That's not a space station, famous line for a reason. Check the post if you don't remember. It ties into the MK Ultra hearing in data law changes. May 17, 1976, Denver Palmer flight record around the world. May 17, 1976, Denver Emmys. May 19, 1976, Senate establishes Intel Committee. July 14, 1977, U.S. House establishes Intel Committee. July 15, 1977, 7 boxes MK Ultra docs found handled by Intel committees. December 21, 1977, Denver Nuclear Storage. The simple answer for Gulf symbolism is that it's used to coordinate funding from the government. I covered the comms of the first PGA Tour club, what about the second? January 18, 1917, Miramar, Top Gun, opens. January 21, 1917, Engineers Country Club formed hosted PGA Champs 2nd 1919. It gets complicated because I'm connecting dots to other decodes of mine as it's all connected. In fact the Top Gun connection, you may remember this post. I went over comms tied to football and volleyball. This is because sports are interconnected. First U.S. Open. March 1893, Newport Country Club Incorporated, first U.S. Open in 1895. March 1893, first Stanley Cup Dominion Hockey Montreal. This carries through to tennis. Jack Nicklaus redesigned the Australian Open Club the same year they had the only ever double Australian Tennis Open. Why double? January 3, 1977, 65th AUS Open. January 3, 1977, Apple Incorporated $666 Apple. December 19, 1977, 66th AUS Open. September 11, 1977, final U.S. Open Tennis in Queens, New York moving to Flushing Meadows. September 11, 1977, Principles of Guidelines of Nuclear Transfers agreed. September 11, 1977, release of Atari 2600, Pong Tennis origin. August 26, 1978, John Paul I becomes Pope. August 28, 1978, U.S. Open Tennis debut Flushing Meadows. I'll know more when I get into tennis in my next sports post. But for now let's focus on golf. Is the funding mechanism still going? June 23, 2007, Chambers Bay Golf Course. June 23, 2007. Gazprom Pipeline Agreement. Origins. Spalding. Guy that gave the world the first official ball for every sport. February 2, 1876. National League Baseball formed. February 3, 1876. Albert Spalding starts the company that sells the first official baseball, tennis ball, basketball, golf ball, and football. February 7, 1876. Puck first appears hockey. March 7, 1876. Graham Bell patent telephone. Comms for that. February 3, 1876. Albert Spalding starts the company that sells the first official baseball, tennis ball, basketball, golf ball, and football. February 6, 1876. Albert Park Emerald Hill's famous shark attack saved by horse rider. Albert. Emerald Hill equals emerald equals money. I cover that symbol in other posts, for example an emerald tied to the biggest government funding act of all time. April 19, 1956. Federal Aid Highway Act introduced. April 19, 1956. Emerald Ring of Grace Kelly, Wedding of the Century. I can confirm its money symbol here too. Why? I found other articles. Notice Emerald Hill is on Bank Street. So this is about funding ops. Shoemaker is a symbol for creating jobs for an individual. Likely this transition to team-based ops from whatever they had before was a big deal. Most influential person in baseball acted as the governing body of the new baseball league. Led a team of baseball missionaries around the world. The moral stated in the dead swimmer story was in not following instructions. They had warned about shark attacks days before, which means the timing is actually. February 3, 1876. Albert Spalding begins sporting store. 02/03-ish/1876 First Albert Park Emerald Bank St. Shark attack. Digging more into Spalding's history, he started the store in February 1876, the very next month the plan of revolution in baseball was hatched. The point as best I can tell was in the alliances being created. The biggest companies already used sports to coordinate. The military is drawn of the country just as companies are, and so the morality of the military can't be guaranteed as good or evil but must be examined case by case. The funding pipeline was to some a tool to enrich, but for others a way to do good. The tech revolution leading to cars and planes and phones was led by the USA. The funding mechanism is connected to this. August 25, 1909. Columbia Country Club established, 1921 U.S. Open. August 25, 1909. U.S. Army selected Columbia Country Club for the world's first military airfield. I covered Arnold Palmer extensively, but what about the more famous Jack Nicklaus? Both were active at the same time. Given that Palmer symbolized moving money from aid to ops. I suspect that Golden Bear, Jack William Nicklaus has a few comms. Jack is a comm I've gone over as symbolism for Union Jack. Multiple countries uniting in action. William equals Bill, cash, and Nicholas equals Saint Nick, i.e. Santa Claus. Comms not of funneling but giving money. Which finally brings us back to Trump. That famous Jack Nicklaus course made for Trump. Notice the date set to open in April 1, 2015. Does that ring a bell with you? I already extensively decoded what Trump was doing during these years. Time to April Fools, a symbol used in this context to convey the idea of what would happen if they ran their campaign. Which makes what I found in digging into this easy to read. TEMBO/ROLO. A game promoting an elephant fighting a military. March 11, 2015. Trump Ferry Point begins taking reservations. NYC first public golf course opened since 1960s. Jack Nicklaus designed it. March 11, 2015. Game Freak, Pokemon Dev, TEMBO the Badass Elephant announced rescue Shell City from military invasion. These are comms coordinating the push of Trump to split the Republican vote. I only knew the release date and general concept up until just now. Why mention this? Because if my decode at a glance is correct, then it predicts what I should see when digging in. What did I find? Notice at the end of the trailer time to Trump was the phrase, "Mission accomplished." This was a phrase used for years to trash Bush. Notice in the end the elephant carries two black people away from the military. The goal, if you read my post on elephants you understand origins. Peanuts represented newly freed slaves as Democrats tried to stop voting for Republicans. Of course the collectibles are peanuts, which is a calm for picking up voters given the history, but also just common sense given the iconography. More interesting is the history of development here. The Pokemon developers were behind it, but not just them. Pokemon being tied to it makes sense given Pokemon Go came out in 2016, a partnership of Google and Pokemon. Notice their partnership began with April Fool's collab, which was also the origin of the Trump push. A message of what happens if they run. Partners banding together create a loud noise in promoting the third candidate. What did happen? The creation of a loud media campaign. Hence the elephant charging onto the scene and loudly sounding off. But notice they partnered with Sega for this. Why Sega? Actually, before I get into that, I want to make sure you notice that the prospect of him running as a third party was big news. July 21, 2015, TEMBO released. August 6, 2015, Trump starts the Republican debate by refusing to rule out a third-party run. Sega? I found a clue for the answer here by reading the comments. Turns out TEMBO is the second elephant protagonist ever by Sega. The first? 1992, ROLO equals Ross Perot 2015, TEMBO equals Trump. So by including Sega they invoke the same calm from 1992. As in, we are doing the same thing. When I charted out the history of Trump buying golf courses, the first date ended up being 1999. Based on prior decodes they were originally going to run Trump against W. Bush starting then. Look at the timeline, when Trump left the Perot party, what happened? June 8, 1999, Marla Maples divorce. June 25, 1999, Trump's father dead. August 7, 2000, Trump's mother dead. February 2000, Jesse Ventura exits Reform Party. February 2000, Trump pulls out of Reform Party race, Perot's third-party vehicle. 2000, Trump's brother-in-law dead. As best I can tell, parties were not happy that Al Gore had lost due to no Republican vote splitter. Some of that animosity translated into all the bad things happening to Trump. His bad times continued until he started buying golf courses again in 2002. One of these golf courses is particularly interesting as it was originally going to be opened July 4, 1999. Independence Day, but then a landslide derailed it. Clearly forces were trying to stop him, and so I can't help but wonder if this golf course represented his run. You may remember Trump's foray into pro wrestling as comms for taking over the Republican vote. One curious connection there was the use of Kennedy McMahon as the foil. They had a whole plot line planned around Ken Kennedy being his son. I'm still learning much of this stuff myself, in time it'll be clear. The promotion to make a third-party candidate out of Trump began with Apprentice. A show that screamed out loudly the exact kind of things a Republican voter/fiscal conservatives would want in a leader. What was golf doing when that first aired? January 8, 2004, Apprentice debut. January 8, 2004, PGA Tour begins. Note how big the show was in debut, highly promoted top new show of the year. The PGA timing also means any changes to the PGA itself then is likely a connected comm. The PGA Tour decided starting 2004 to no longer rotate Champions Cup between Houston, Bush, and East Lake Atlanta, 666 zip code. Because remember in 2004 it was Bush Clinton Bush then whom? As in this is a symbol for saying Bush's side will never get another turn and that from now on it'll only be Clinton. It's overwhelming just how many comms I've already covered verifying this. Here is yet another new decode for it though not as obvious as the last couple. Miley Cyrus Teddy Roosevelt tattoo. July 10, 2012. Trump opens $150 million golf course. July 11, 2012. Miley Cyrus flashes new arm tattoo of Teddy Roosevelt. The tattoo is from 1910 Teddy Roosevelt speech. This was right before he split the elephant vote in 1912 running as a Ross Perot. The speech itself, about it being okay to lose. I.e. a campaign to screw your constituents. With all that in mind, the symbolism of the Jack Nicklaus Trump course is likely in a funding of the community online. Cons of funding/promoting, St. Nick gift, with all goes anything that fits that template, and there were many things that did that year. Each of the sports has a role it seems. The murders and threats that lead to both real and fake deaths are tied at least partly to pro wrestling. Macho Man. I watched a documentary on Macho Man, ended up being a great source for decoding the original WWF supervillain as they merged the regional shows. His history is spoken of as tied to a violent gang war between pro wrestling factions. So violent they had to bring guns. Savage would uniquely call out his vendetta on Lawler, the King, until they ran out of money and Savage accepted a role under McMahon. This new history documentary is full of comms. I expected arbitrary puff, but no. Randy Savage is called paranoid schizophrenic and that he secretly videotaped his family from cameras hidden all over his house. This dot is incredibly important when reconciled with another. May 19, 2011. Fukushima nuclear plant shutdown. May 19, 2011. Slim Jim maker to close plant tomorrow. Slim Jim equals Randy Savage spokesman. May 20, 2011. Macho Man Randy Savage died. Connecting him with secret tapes and schizophrenia. That confirms what I already decoded with Fukushima. Which means the story of his death may explain the point to comms-aware individuals. The story is told that Jeep was about to crash and kill many more people, so his wife steered the Jeep into a tree. It was messaging to shut down cells monitoring Savages, I suspect. For whatever reason, something was at risk of either going public or creating legal issues for some group of people. Whatever the case, a sudden stop order looks to have been given. They juxtapose constantly saying he was constantly on drugs and constantly surveilling stars, tattoo, but also that he was always in character. This is because the messaging is as a comm that much of the story being told is about the acting role he lived. Notice he began as Savage in 1977, notice he was the first villain Spider-Man, Sony/Japanese owned, fights in his movie reboot. These are films I already decoded existed to promote Facebook. The old surveillance died and new surveillance was born. His actual root symbolism Savage, Macho Man, comes from YMCA, which the organization itself is tied to the origin of multiple sports. Likely it was the framework built to utilize the planned-out sports ops. They needed a lot of young people to facilitate it. That translated to what is likely many types of ops, some that MK'd people in networks. This appears to be the origin of Savage's cell, because remember, they outright said the origin of his regional wrestling outfit was nuts and forced people to carry guns for safety. It all ties together because the YMCA would have been the rubric necessary to organize whatever his violent cell was to start with. So he acted as a symbol for it. Note the story Hogan gives as it ties to Savage. It begins with Mr. Nanny filming. Symbol of watching over kids, and the story he gives involves Savage furious at his wife, the equally famous Miss Elizabeth, hiding at Hulk Hogan's place without his knowledge for months. This leads to 20 cop cars being called. Clearly these are comms. That includes the story beginning with Mr. Nanny. April 1993, Mr. Nanny, Hulk Hogan. May 1993, Super Mario Bros. Movie. Bomb movies comms. Notice the proximity between these two bomb films. I already decoded the Mario film as it represented Nintendo agreeing to stay out of Hollywood by tarnishing their own mega brand. I suspect the same was true of Mr. Nanny as an agreement with McMahon not to leverage his ability to make stars and cut in on Hollywood. That doesn't mean the films themselves aren't still sending comms outside of that, and the symbol of Hogan being a nanny, or perhaps a failed nanny, seems to represent what was going on with people under protection tied to his comms. Represented by Miss Elizabeth leaving Savage to hide with him for fear of safety. I couldn't find the precise date this event happened, even though it's spoken of like it was global news at the time. If it did happen, then it sounds like comms being sent about secret agents watching over people targeted by savages. 1970s. The name Hogan was synonymous with a popular show. Hogan's Heroes, a show about Hogan, a military column leader of a POW group under Nazis as they conducted espionage, spying from behind enemy lines and sabotage. A reader clued me in on a comm from Despicable Me 2 regarding Macho Man's fate. A character named El Macho, who played a villain, died in the most macho way possible, but actually just faked his death. So there you go, practically broadcasting it as a fake death for comms. The final golfer to discuss is the most famous. Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods. I actually already covered him in this post. I took his last name, Woods, to symbolize Bretton Woods. So even before the post I already had golf tied to gold symbolism, but of course that was just one golfer. I needed to decode more before I could be sure of the symbolism. The comms tied to funding with Tiger Woods began when he was 2 years old. 1978 Tiger Electronics, first cross-control pad. 1978 Tiger Woods TV premiere 2 years old golf. Cross-control pad was Nintendo's first. Age 2 equals the early state of the electronics industry. Nintendo comm is important because April 1, 1997, Nintendo Pokémon anime debut, the biggest media franchise all time. April 1, 1997, Hale-Bopp visible 18 months across the world, most viewed comet in history. April 10, 1997, Tiger Woods wins first major tournament, the fastest ascent to number 1. Stop. Why the difference in dates? Don't I usually connect dates that are together? Yes, but it's all symbolism. Sometimes a comm wouldn't make any sense if it took place the same day, but would make sense if it took place 10 days later, such is the case here. The point was visibility with Pokémon. The popularity hits a fever pitch when the cartoon comes out. They measure the sales of games for 10 days and conclude their push has been successful. Tiger Woods then sends comms of success by gold domination. His initials being E, the biggest movie for a decade, and the Nintendo comms tied to that franchise. Spark of life symbolism from God. November 25, 2009. Tiger Woods' biggest scandal begins. National Enquirer publishes a story about his affair. November 27, 2009. Tiger Woods crashes Genesis Invitational into a fire hydrant and tree. November 25, 2009. Netanyahu declares 10-month settlement freeze on construction in West Bank. November 25, 2009. Saudi Arabia floods begin causing over $1 billion in damage, including $270 million US losses. The scandal looks to be an argument being had by Mossad and CIA. The 10-month freeze on West Bank construction is likely symbolic of Israel pausing an arrangement with CIA to suck up money. In many posts I decode cooperation between the two in taking foreign aid. Tiger Woods being multiracial was likely symbolic of cooperation between foreign/domestic. All sides could destroy him, but to do so would be breaking the arrangement between the sides. Blackmailed. October 5, 2004. Tiger Woods' marriage goes on to seduce over 120 women focused on college girls. October 5, 2004. Leisure Suit Larry reboot, game about seducing many college girls. By multiple sides, and then pin is pulled on that fame when things break down. This dig began trying to ascertain the symbolism of golf so as to better understand recent events. We have learned in this dig that golf is used to coordinate the movement of money. Foreign aid palmed and converted into ops through the central banks. Palmer. They also send markers through golf of successfully carried out funded ops. All of this is relevant today. Reconciliation. For example, notice things coordinated with April 4th. Trump's arrest was on April 4th, and the man who became richest in the world during COVID and just bought Twitter for $44 billion. These comms go back much further, but check my 4/4 post for that. Transcription of part of video is bottom left. Talks about former North Korean dictator's hideous baseball-sized tumor nobody was allowed to talk about. Notice he was born the same day the Titanic sank. Symbol of buried secrets and murder for central banks. Check intro. Baseball-sized tumor, calm for what was going on with baseball ops. July 8, 1994. NK head Kim Il-sung death, baseball tumor. July 19, 1994. Kingdom collapse Seattle Mariners, owned by Nintendo, lose home. July 19, 1994. Kim Jong-il first time seen in years looks sickly. I often talk about data being offshored by Russia/Japan/China/Israel, but I don't mean they keep it locally. They all have investigative bodies that could cause issues. Comms suggest North Korea is the final destination for storage. Vase equals water storage. That's more an aside to what Tucker was discussing, but it was a good lead to dig. While I'd like to get precise, what I see is what I've shown, comms of transparency. Exposure and Biden scandals to come. Gulf is funding, and Saudi Arabia has proven to be honorably helping clean up over the past years. A Trump ally for good reason. Right now things are going in what looks like a precarious direction for Trump, but the opposite is transparently clear when following comms. So what is being funded right now? Transparency. A path that involves a choreographed narrative where Trump looks to be falling and rises and Biden who looks to be rising but falls. You'll love how this movie ends. Note the placements with Trump's social media account. It's a movie, my work is a spoiler, but if you read my work you likely prefer learning how tricks work rather than being tricked. Smiley face. And how do we learn the trick? Objectivity. I'm not always right. I say this frequently, and I'm going to explain a major reason as to why. In almost every post I focus on the biggest comms ever sent. They are the easiest trails to follow, but this gives an impression the extremes are the norm. I'm going to tackle more mundane family-friendly comms that may help course-correct readers and myself. Let's talk about MGM's first cartoon star, Barney Bear. Their first cartoon was 1939, The Bear Who Couldn't Sleep. What comm could a bear not sleeping send? A bear trying to sleep but failing as he constantly gets interrupted. As usual, the answer became clear using a timeline. Watch the cartoon and instead of a bear imagine a parent. June 10, 1939, MGM's first successful original cartoon, The Bear That Couldn't Sleep. June 6, 1939, Little League Baseball first game unites countries all around the world. Keep in mind the season would continue for months. With that connection in mind, the cartoon makes perfect sense. There are a bunch of situations the bear gets into that you can easily replace with a common parental annoyance. E.g., imagine a child in 1939 keeping a parent up with whistling. Or how about playing music too loud and too often? Scene has the record constantly replaying the same thing over and over to his frustration until it gets louder, and the bear breaks it. How many times do children watch the same movie over and over again? Or how about getting talk back from kids? Bear walks away and then angrily looks back multiple times as the fire acts as a proxy for child's horseplay. What is the solution? He begins counting sheep leaving eventually until he hits over 1,000,000, and then it's springtime. The point being to give children something to do in baseball rather than stay at home bothering parents. Tire them out. In fact, the count to 1,000,000 is the kinds of numbers of children Little League literally achieved every year. So these are comms marking the push. Why Little League? This is the comm that defined why it was funded/pushed. Note the bear tries to hush and fail the whistling kettle. There's, probably, nothing malicious or dark. It's refreshingly family-friendly. I suspect there are many comms like it that have gone under my radar. Using a kid's cartoon makes more sense as a symbol for the Little League comms. Kids' cartoons already represent something made to distract kids. Little League gives them activities and tires them out, so they are more manageable. Imagine if they were blunt about it. It'd be insulting to both and act as repellent. Comms solution. It's important to not begin decoding by assuming every bit of water is information. Don't force decodes but look at the overall shape and recognize the messaging. This doesn't mean there aren't dark sides to cartoons. What we see fits a template I've covered before actually, but with a more serious consequence. March 20, 1943, Tex Avery's best-known MGM character Droopy debut. March 23, 1943, Vicodin first produced, treats depression, Droopy, transforming. Ends with giant rock, Vicodin pill, being used to keep the criminal subdued in prison. Rowdy populations being a larger problem before drugging them up. The juxtaposition of the wolf escaping in panic followed by the solution in Droopy. Droopy appears in contrast to hundreds of frantic dogs escaping from prison. Droopy inexplicably tracks the killer. Because after Vicodin the killers become droopy and no longer dangerous. I'll give another example. BOSKO/BOSCO. I decoded BOSKO the black ink kid in a recent post. But what I learned after decoding was that it was also the name of a new chocolate syrup named BOSCO. Which means BOSCO was invoking what BOSCO was used as a symbol for. 1938 BOSCO Negro Boy, first drawn. 1938 BOSCO chocolate syrup goes on to market. Same year, and given it's a black syrup, inventing a black cartoon at the same time is probably not a coincidence. But what is the symbol? Was my original decode wrong? Or if my decode isn't wrong, it's at least incomplete. There may be many levels to these things. In any case, in the last 10 minutes I looked anew, but instead of forcing, I went to the original ads and the obvious symbol became obvious. Here are the original ads for BOSCO. What do they all have in common, and what do they share in common with the original cartoon? The symbolism of the ink kids taking a bath in white. Mixing white and black akin to how all the BOSCO ads go. All of them push BOSCO as though it were a revolutionary product to add chocolate syrup to milk for kids. This is the push. I have to assume at the time it was a novel and unknown thing for kids to get chocolate syrup to mix in with milk. A cultural push of sorts, and one that pushed BOSCO as a popular product for decades. That doesn't mean the dark side is gone, only that there is a surface level to contend with. March 24, 1977. Roman Polanski indicted for 6 charges, giving controlled substance to a minor and raping them. March 26, 1977. BOSCO saxophone. BOSCO equals mixing in a foreign chemical. The difference is I've now come to recognize what might be called family-friendly comms that have gone under my radar in the past. I've decoded quite a few Disney movies with dark sides tied to blackmail, but is that all there is to them? Disney box office failure. A plot about a puppet trying to become a real boy with the help of his conscience named Jiminy Cricket. Note the key context of it being released during World War II as why it failed. Given Disney was at the time working for the government. Would they really be sending dark comms? No, and in fact, Jiminy Cricket is a polite symbol for Jesus Christ. Meaning the overall symbolism of the film is finding morality through God. This fits the push out of World War II. It doesn't change the blackmail comms, mind you. But it does give what should have been obvious to me before now. The face of family-friendly. Paying lip service to not being a snidely whiplash railroad track tying caricature. This recalibration is a long time coming. Once I recognized comms at that level represented non-dark things, I realized I needed a new approach. Never force it. If a comm isn't clear, you need to find the correct context and historical footnotes. Moonwalker. I've decoded quite a few comms tied to Michael Jackson and dark things. I have no doubt he is tied to a lot of blackmail-related comms, but that doesn't mean they all are. For example, One aspect of these comms is the tech push. What is the symbol of moonwalking? What exactly is he doing when he moonwalks, and what could it possibly symbolize? Solving something like this often requires historical clues. For example, Moonwalker was a name long before Michael Jackson invoked it. And when I dug into that Moonwalker, the whole symbol became clear. November 17, 1970. Moonwalker lands on Moon. The first ever date of moonwalking. November 17, 1970. Computer mouse patented. This answers everything. What does a mouse do in relation to a keyboard? It slides. What is a moonwalk in relation to any other dance? Moonwalk was originally called the backslide because that's what it is. The whole dance is literally just sliding on the floor like a computer mouse. This begs the question, why would he send comms about a computer mouse? Computer mice are common today, but when did they start? January 19, 1983, Apple first introduces mouse with Lisa system. March 25, 1983, Michael Jackson Moonwalker debut. May 2, 1983, Microsoft introduces first mouse. Right in the middle of the two biggest releasing their first mouse. Which means the symbol is for the push to adopt the new sliding way of interacting with computers. A foreign concept at the time. It also explains why he has only one glove on. You don't use a mouse with two hands. Notice the first time he wore the glove it was specifically for the moonwalk. Why would those two things be connected unless my decode is right? I didn't know it was the first time he did that, but the comms predicted it. It also explains oddities like why he turns into a robot in the Moonwalker game. Insane without the cipher, and logical with it. This means space launches were tied into the tech race of the time. Not a surprise given my past science decodes. I go through a ton of famous scientific discoveries, which were clearly representing new market pushes. In fact, a reader took this wealth of decodes I did this week and expanded it by one. June 1919, discovery of proton for the first time shown off. June 1919, first successful food franchising operation. Read the post linked above, and you'll see this is a common trend. Consider the many marketing pushes that define our world. What sucks up the culture and therefore the money? Do famous sports stars make companies big money? Michael Jordan helped Nike earn $19 billion. Who was the first one? Babe Ruth. Thus the beginning of the trend was his first endorsement. March 25, 1937, Babe Ruth first reports of his lucrative endorsement contracts. March 30, 1937, Anderson and Neddermeyer discover the muon particle. The scientific discovery, an announcement of a new way to make money. Who else falls under this rubric? The biggest band to ever dominate the culture. February 1964, Beatlemania begins. Beatlemania hits top of charts for first time. February 1964, Omega particle discovery. I could go on, but read the post if you want more. More updates. June 11, 2023, Arcangelo wins 2023 Belmont Stakes, trainer first woman to win a Triple Crown race. Interesting potential comm here with the first female. Some, not all, horse racing comms are tied to candidate races, and seeing the first female trainer win a Triple Crown makes me think of Kamala Harris and the change of batter many have expected was coming for Biden. This fits what I've decoded of her role as a comms vehicle. That her name invokes a losing candidacy, but one that would be pushed through regardless. The name of this trainer is interesting, no history to dig into, not even a birth date, which makes me think the name is likely a comm. Antonucci, Anthony plus Scaramucci merged. Symbol of an interim position quickly displacing the old so as to make way for the one after. Though name comms can be tricky as it's easy to twist some names into what you expect to see. That's not to say it's not plausible, critical thinking may be difficult on how names like this could be planned, so I'll explain my take. I've shown enough name comms that I'm confident it's a common practice in that world. Sometimes a person simply changes their name to fit a desired com. When I decoded Obama, the comms revealed a likely changed name early in his career. This is one of the reasons why his records remain sealed. The horse trainer appears to be a new celebrity, so they may not have had that name long. Even if people who know her know the truth, do they have a voice? I suspect control of a narrative has long kept secrets like that at bay. For women, it's easier, as they can get married to get a new last name. Wouldn't even necessarily be public info if it's someone outside the public eye. This fits this trainer perfectly. Other times, and perhaps more frequently, name comms are surely long planned out for expected plans or predictions in some cases. Still, I am confident big things are on the horizon, and so it fits the scope for that. Musk has recently given Tucker Carlson a giant microphone, and these videos are all must-watch. That these are allowed to exist is a massive sign of the changed times. We are still living in a facade or simulation. It looks this way because it has to. The real story of what's going on has been seeded in comms, which I go through weekly here. The rise and fall of Joe Biden was a clear part of the plan, as I show in many of these posts. I'm always finding or being sent comms that refine my understanding of this plan. The newest of which is one I'll share now. This article is particularly interesting because it gives a date of when confidential whistleblower revealed Biden secrets. Recorded audio of Joe and Hunter Biden. June 12, 2023. Grassley, Burisma executive who allegedly paid Biden, has audio recordings of conversations with Joe and Hunter on June 30, 2020. What else happened that day? Quite a bit actually, but first let's focus on one data point, June 30, 2020, that jumped out at me. See, that was a very special date because it just so happened to be the very last Reddit post of Ghislaine Maxwell. A mysterious post about someone moving 1 billion in Bitcoin. Given Maxwell clearly flipped based on numerous comms I've gone over, dozens consistent over years really. Her final post being timed to a whistleblower with Biden tapes. Not likely a coincidence. Moreover, the subject matter is Bitcoin being moved, and it was made public. Someone sending 1 billion via Bitcoin on that day sounds like a show of faith on a flip. The very next day it's announced that Epstein's slave lost in court. After flipping, this may have been calling off what would have been. Same day as this. June 30, 2020, Fauci testifies at Senate committee warning of 100,000 new cases a day. June 30, 2020, China grants itself sweeping powers to curtail civil liberties in Hong Kong. July 1, 2020, Epstein sex slave lost in court. July 1, 2020, Beaver fever invasion. What is beaver a comm for? Symbol for testimony of beavers. Note tying it to sickness. COVID was a way to handle flips, and Maxwell flipping triggers what? November 17, 2019. First COVID-19 case. November 17, 2019. Hong Kong police siege 1,300 arrests. June 30, 2020. China grants itself sweeping powers to curtail civil liberties in Hong Kong. Check my Waco post for the relevance here. The short version is it's about the hostage situations. I have reason to believe this all may be coming to fruition very soon. Not just these comms but many more. July 16, 2023. Japan raises age of consent from 13 to 16 in reform of sex crimes law. Criminalizes voyeurism, which makes me think of all the spy ops and new investigations into them. What kind of comms is coordinating this? Probably quite a few, and one in particular has my eye at the moment. For example, CM Punk's return to the WWE has been hyped up this week, and I dug up a few interesting things. Notice he was released/fired from WWE on his wedding day. Who was he married to? Another pro wrestler, April A.J. Lee. Born the same day of the downfall of famous televangelist Jim Bakker. Taken down by accusations of drugging and rape. That gives her a potential symbol of whistleblowing. This is in relation to her WWE career as a comm, so when did that begin? September 7, 2010. AJ Lee WWE debut. September 7, 2010. Senkaku boat collision creates international crisis between China/Japan. This may not mean anything, but given the new age laws it may paint a picture. September 7, 2010. China/Japan Japanese boat collision incident begins. September 7, 2010. Ben drowned posts begin, most famous creepypasta online. September 12, 2010. Lady Gaga meet dress incident MTV Movies Award. Gaga, a symbol of gag order, so if this timing is meaningful. I noticed Ghislaine Maxwell correlations to CM Punk news. I'd post now, but I need to dig into the Wayback Machine on Terramar, among other time sinks, for it. That name. Though don't get your hopes up, I like to be optimistic, and I expect big things to come, but this decode is not so much a decode at the moment as it is wishful thinking. Too many unknowns at the moment, but it's fun to speculate, smiley face. I try and make sure you know when I'm speculating, but plenty of decodes in this post are solid. The speculation is reserved for stuff like this where people ask me to decode something and I can't find anything conclusive. The odds of me getting it exactly right when speculating is small, but the odds I'm loosely right are high. This is because I've decoded what's going on in the aggregate with high confidence. I know the overall direction we are going. Think about all my posts on Corona, how many different angles have I decoded that thing from? The military is in control and most major businesses have agreed to cooperate. Fed control was gained and that allows money to be pumped into people cooperating and away from those not. This is probably a reason why Gulf comms are so big as it's tied to money movement. The overall picture is clear and looks great, the fine details are still often invisible to me, but I get better every week. Thank you for joining me in this. A long way to go yet, but I believe this is the path to something better. Telegram chat. Join the Decoding Blog Telegram group. Begin decoding. Send leads. Note, WordPress started running about 10x slower, so I wasn't able to edit as much. It still improved compared to the Twitter threads with more images for clarification especially, but not as improved as the last few weeks. Next week should be better on that end. This has been Golf.